All right. We're recording is in progress, Josh. That means we are official. We are live in Facebook, and welcome to Legends of Be Wealthy. Super excited today because we have one of our newest members of the Be Wealthy family, Josh Mettle, with us today. And Josh has a really unique investment strategy that works at a really, really high level for him and his partner. And I'm so excited that he's going to take some time to share it with us. When we invite members onto the Legends of Be Wealthy, one of the things that we really look at is, are they moving down the path of that family office mindset? And Josh absolutely is. And we're super excited to have him as part of our family. As y'all know, our Be Wealthy group is made up of business owners in the real estate space. That means they could be lenders, they could be in insurance, they could be in retail real estate, they could be in commercial real estate, they could be wholesale and investors. And so we're excited to have Josh today to share with us about his business and his investment strategy. So Josh, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure.
Yeah. Perfect. So tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're located, about your core operating business, and then let's dive right in.
Yeah, you bet. So I'm based out of Park City, Utah. We have been buying and holding real estate, started out in the residential, now mostly in commercial for the last 22 years. And I think what makes my model a little bit different from anybody else I've heard from inside the Be Wealthy group is that our preferred hold time for an investment is 100 years. Do you have anybody in the group with a longer hold time than 100 years?
Not that they're declaring. Okay. 100 years is the highest declaration.
I'm claiming it then. The longest preferred hold time in all of Be Wealthy. I got the pole position, 100 years. And that gives us just kind of a unique perspective, because I am thinking about, is this an asset and how am I going to manage this asset so that my kids and their kids hopefully will be able to reap benefit from that investment. So we'll kind of go into some of those strategies. And what I'm going to unpack here is looking back over 22 years, which, by the way, we still own the first apartment building that we bought 22 years ago. What are the lessons that we have learned throughout that process that it would have been almost impossible to learn reading a book or trying to connect the dots looking forward?
Awesome. That's incredible. You're exactly right that the majority of the people in our room are really looking at initially short-term to mid-term to long-term investments, and really to climb through that investment or asset ladder. And it is incredibly unique that you have gone really through the back end and said, rather than long-term, I'm going forever on asset holdings and the benefits thereof. So let's dive right in and take a look at some of what you have accomplished and what you're looking to continue to grow so that we can learn from you.
Cool. Well, thanks. So team, what I put together was a PowerPoint presentation to kind of lead you through the 5 biggest lessons that I've learned through this 22-year investment career. My mom, my wife, started this business 22 years ago, and it's grown to now have about $100 million of assets under management. So medical office buildings, retail, some residential stuff still, you name it. If it's got cash flow tied to it and we want to hold it for 100 years, we'll buy it. So I think with that, and then one other thing I didn't answer for you, Caitlin, which is what's our primary business? Because everybody's got to have some cash generation business that gives us the capital to go do those investments. So my primary business is mortgage, and I try to extract as many dollars out of that business into the family office, as you put it, for long-term investment as humanly possible. I will, with that, just start sharing my slide deck and jump in if you're okay with it.
Let's do it. I can't wait.
All right, cool. All right. So, the name of this presentation is real estate is not a get rich quick game. It's a get rich for sure game. And the one thing that I've learned about real estate is time forgives all. We got into the business of becoming long-term holders, not because we were brilliant. We're terrible flippers. We were horrible. In fact, if you wanted to know when there was going to be a real estate pullback, just search the title records for when Josh Mettle bought a piece of property and tried to flip it. And for sure, you knew that the market was going to crash in that area. But coincidentally, that was really fortunate for us because we were such horrible flippers. We had to then become holders. And over a long period of time, that's really what our business has grown into. And I'm going to show you some of the real advantages of being a long-term holder. Now, I hope we have some Matrix fans in the house. Anybody a Matrix fan? Caitlin? Okay, cool. I love Matrix. And we named our company, our mortgage company, Neo Home Loans, actually having nothing to do with the Matrix, but it's kind of, it has some similarities. So I'm going to pull it into this presentation. But there's this famous point in this moment in the Matrix where Morpheus, played by Lawrence Fishburne, offers a blue pill or a red pill to Neo, the hero of the story. And Morpheus says, you take the blue pill and the story ends. You wake up in your bed and you believe whatever you want to believe. You just play by the normal rules of life, basically. And he says, you take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes. And so when I think about investment theories or financial strategies, I think about it in terms of the conventional blue pill and the unconventional red pill. And so the blue pill standard conventional wisdom is we get a degree, we get a W-2 job, we pay off debt, then we save some money, and the game is asset accumulation. We hope we've accumulated enough assets in retirement that we can draw 4% of those assets per year. That's what the conventional mainstream wisdom is. We can draw 4% of those assets per year, and hopefully we don't die before we run out of retirement assets in our 401k. The red pill, the non-conventional trail, the maverick trail is financial literacy. It never ends. We become an entrepreneur. Even if I'm a mortgage originator and even if I have a W-2'd income from mortgage, I still have side hustles, businesses that I'm growing to create cash flow. I use leverage rather than focused on paying off debt. I use leverage to create wealth and to create opportunities for additional cash flow. I invest. The difference between saving and investing in my mind is investment pays a rate of return greater than the rate of inflation. And I play the cash flow game. The cash flow game is I'm going to accumulate so many assets that I will never burn them off in retirement. I'll simply live off the cash flow forever. And when you play that game, living to be 200 years old, as long as the body is willing to play nicely, becomes a really kind of a fun game because your cash flow just grows and grows and grows. So we're gonna all metaphorically take the red pill here today, and we're gonna go down that rabbit hole. Most important author and mentor of my life, Robert Kiyosaki. I was 19 years old. I was raised by a single mother. She was a solo entrepreneur, and I had the great fortune of being in and out of the welfare system my entire youth. I remember buying groceries with food stamps. I remember at one point, my mother sold her wedding ring at a pawn shop so that we had enough money for a Fuddruckers burger, and so she could take me to a movie that she promised me. So on one side of on one side, I had, fear, let's just say, around money. There was always a shortage and fear around it. And then my grandparents, ironically, were entrepreneurs. They had a landscaping business. They eventually built a 90-unit apartment complex. So I had the great benefit or fortune of seeing the dichotomy of money. Food stamps, hawk your wedding ring for a burger, and somebody who owned a 90-unit apartment building. And my grandmother, who owned that apartment building, gave me Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I remember listening to it on tape on the way down to visit them. And Robert said a few things that changed my life forever. One of the things he said was most people have a price, and they have a price because of human emotions named fear and greed. First, the fear of being without money motivates to work hard. Then once we get that paycheck, greed or desire starts us thinking about all of the wonderful things money can buy. A pattern is then created. Get up, go to work, pay bills, get up, go to work, pay bills. And then their lives are then run forever by two emotions, fear and greed. Offer them more money and they'll continue the cycle by also increasing their spending. This is what I call the rat race. That was the most important piece of information that a 19-year-old could ever learn, in my opinion. And this is just a little bit of a diagram of what the rat race means. I'll just go through it like super quick, but I think everybody can identify with this pattern because it's a human, it's dictated by or created by the human emotions of fear and greed, which we all have inside us as humans. So as Robert said, fear and the lack of not having. Am I sharing my screen okay, by the way, Caitlin?
Yeah, you're doing
Perfect.
absolutely perfect.
Okay,
this
cool.
Diagram is, I haven't seen it drawn out this way, and this diagram is awesome.
It's kick-ass. I love it. This is really insightful for me. So the fear and the lack has us go, and we've got these bills that we got to take care of, has us go out and get a job. Then we get a job and we get money and we're like, sweet, I just got a raise. Then desire kicks in. This is where greed kicks in. I should get a new car because then people will see how successful I am in my new job. And I definitely need some new kicks. So then I go spend my money and then I don't have any money anymore. And then I go, oh shit, now I don't have any money. Now I need to go back to work so I can pay my bills, so I can earn some more money. And then I can buy some new kicks. And then 40 years later, we realize we're stuck in the rat race. And so the goal is we got to get out of this rat race. Well, how do we do that? Well, Robert says that the people who get out of the rat race the quickest are the people who understand numbers and have a creative financial mind. Now, that was powerful and very scary at a 19 years age, because I did not have a creative financial mind. So thank God Robert is great at drawing stuff on the back of napkins, and he created the cash flow quadrant. And this quite literally changed my life and will forever change the Mettle household and the Mettle name. All of my children will always learn this. This will be their first tattoo. So what Robert said was, look, employees have a job. And I was like, okay, cool. I found myself, I'm square in the top left quadrant. And he said, and then other people call themselves self-employed, but really they just own, you own a job. So they own a job, meaning that they still have to be there. They're self-employed, but they're still trading their hours for dollars. So they just now own the job and call themselves self-employed. But where you really want to play is on the right of the quadrant. The quadrant is where the business owners live. They own, and the business owners own a system that works for you. They have teammates, they have employees, they have processes that create cash flow, and they don't have to trade their time for that money. And ultimately, you want to take that money and you want to become an investor. And at the moment where money works for you and you're creating more residual income from your businesses than you spend, boom, you've escaped the rat race and you are effectively out of the rat race and you are free. And I was like, that's it. I got to get over here. I got to find a system that works for me to create money. And I have to get my money working for me. I need as many of those dollar soldiers as humanly possible. So Robert then goes on and talks about, how we get paid in real estate. And I've changed this a little bit based on my 22-year history and my perception of this. But if you haven't read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, you should do that. It is the most sold financial book of all time, and it's massively important. But I want to walk through the real lessons that I've got out of the book, but more importantly, that I've seen at work over the last 22 years, and talk about the 5 ways that you get paid as investing in real estate, over the long term. This isn't a flipping business. This isn't the retail business. This is long-term investor quadrant stuff where you're going to keep these properties for a very long period of time. So we get paid in appreciation, amortization, cash flow, rent inflation, which I made up, but I think it's pretty cool. I'll show you that. And rent inflation also can be looked at as debt destruction. So hopefully we'll have time to go into that. And then of course, depreciation, which is where we get to not pay taxes. I tell people that I help in real estate. You either own real estate or you pay taxes, but you do not need to do both if you arrange your finances and your working structure according to the way the IRS tells us to. And we won't get into this bonus around longevity and legacy, but maybe sometime in the future, you'll invite me back and we can talk about that. All right, appreciation. Time is your friend. Humans are really good about thinking linearly and planning linearly. What do I need to do today? What do I need to do this week? What do I need to do this month? What do I need to do this year? We are horrible in thinking in terms of decades. What's going to happen in the 30s, the 40s, and the 50s? So if we look back over long periods of time, like we look back over the last 32 years, the cumulative real estate appreciation for single family houses across the United States has averaged 305%. That's pretty rad. But if you live in the great state of Utah, like I do, all those Mormon jokes aside, Utah has been an unbelievable place to invest. We've seen 587% appreciation over 30 years. And so people say, hey, that's not bad. That's like almost stock market money. Well, actually, it's a lot better than stock market money. It's more like crypto boom money. So let me walk through the math for you. In 1991, let's assume you bought a $200,000 home, which is a nice home in 1991 in Utah. And in 2023, we've seen 587% appreciation. So now that $200,000 home is worth $1.176 million. Great job on not selling that home and holding it for 30 years. You look like a freaking genius.
Right.
All right. But guess what? You didn't put $200,000 of your own cash down on that house, Caitlin. You only put 10% down. So you turned $20,000 investment into $1.176 million. And of course, your 90% mortgage is paid off now because it's been 32 years. And so what's your return on investment? 20,000 down, return of 1.176. You made 5,878% on your investment. That's pretty freaking rad. That is the effect of time and leverage in real estate. That is incredible appreciation. Now, I'll just go through this really quickly because a lot of people that I teach to, they go, gosh, but isn't it a scary time to invest in real estate? I mean, I don't know if you know this, Josh, but real estate prices are at an all-time high. No shit, they're always at an all-time high. Let's look back to the 1940s. If we look back in the 1940s, every year that is green means home values went up nationally. This comes from the S&P Case-Shiller and the BLS national home value metrics. So in the 40s, we saw 3% appreciation, 11%, 17%, 12%. Holy cow, massive appreciation years. Makes total sense, right? Because we just came out of the Great Depression where home values were depressed and now boom. In that decade, home values went up 129%. All right, well, that must have been an anomaly. Well, how about the 1950s? Well, they only went up 36%. How about, by the way, first year we didn't have a green year was 1955 so far, and real estate values were flat. All right, the 60s, they went up 23%. The 70s, 130%, 77%. Does anybody notice we haven't seen a down year in real estate values yet? That's insane. All right, we really got crushed in the 90s. Real estate values were down 1% and then down a little bit less than 1%, but not zero in 1991. But we ended the decade up 30%. How about the 2000s? We must have got crushed in the 2000s, right? No, real estate values up 66%. But what about the Great Recession? Yep, even with the Great Recession, up 66%. 2010, 2011, bad years. Clearly the outlier, 7, 8, 9, 10, and 11. We still finished the decade up 45% nationally. And in the first 3 years of the 2020s, we're already up 39%. So when people say, I'm going to time the market, good luck. Like if you go back over 81 years since 1942, real estate is up 73 years. It's down 7 years, and it's break even 1 year. That's an asset class that has a 90% win rate. And I just showed you, if you'd have put 10% down 30 years ago, you would have had a return of 5,873%. Holy macannoli. We should be buying more real estate and holding it for a lot longer period of time. That's my takeaway. All right, let's go go ahead, Caitlin.
Most people don't. Why do you think most people have the different vantage than you, or the different outlook than you have? Why do you think they maybe hold it a couple years and then, sell it, or they're more into doing quick flips? Why do you think people have a shorter timeline than you do from a perspective standpoint?
They're probably better flippers than me, and they were probably actually able to make a profit. That's my first.
That maybe if they didn't have the burn factor early.
Yeah, they weren't as stupid as me. And I don't know the real answer. My guess is that fear and greed play into it, right? We see the headlines and we get fearful there's going to be a housing crash, so we liquidate everything. We then hear things are doing really good, and greed puts us back into the market, perhaps at the time that we shouldn't be going back into the market. And so I think for most humans, me included, we're always battling fear and greed. And I'll just go back to the thing that I said earlier. Time cures all in real estate. My thesis doesn't have to be right. I don't have to time the market. I don't have to care what CNBC or anybody else is saying about the housing market. I just have to know that when I'm buying a property, it has positive cash flow, and I plan to hold it for 100 years. And I bet you my bottom dollar, I'm going to do okay. So let's run through a real quick kind of case study, and we're going to run through these 5 ways you get paid holding real estate as an investor for a very long period of time. And I want to go back to this blue pill, red pill kind of idea or construct, not because I think Keanu Reeves needs any more money and I want you to go pay to watch that movie, but I really think it is, I think it is a way of thinking. You either think as a W-2 employee or you think as an entrepreneur, and you're fully responsible for your own retirement. And I want to compare and contrast the 2 different strategies a little bit for you to consider. So the blue pill strategy is the conventional thinking. I'm going to save $1 million in my 401k, my IRA, my HSA. And then when I get to retirement, the conventional wisdom is I can draw 4% of that $1 million out per year. And that should last me a 30-year retirement without running out of that money. And so that would be 4% of $1 million is $40,000 a year. That should get me a $3,500 a month income. But for you to grow $1 million in your 401k, you have to control your fear and greed, not sell out at the wrong time. A lot of things got to go right, and you got to put a lot of money in that account over a decent amount of time. Here's another way to get the same $40,000 to get the same $40,000 a year in cash flow. I would offer way easier than having the discipline to save $1 million throughout your lifetime. So let's walk through this. This is 20-year home appreciation. Let's say you bought a primary residence, you paid $600,000 for it, and over 20 years, based on a 4% appreciation, which is kind of like national average stuff. It's definitely not Utah appreciation rate. So this is, very, I think, conservative. Over a 20-year period of time, boom, your $600,000 home went to 1.3 million. Hashtag winning. During that same period of time, you got paid in reason number 2 or way number 2 real estate investors get paid. You got paid by amortization. I'm just double checking to make sure I got that spelled right. Got it. So my $480,000 mortgage, assuming I put 20% down over 20 years, the balance amortized down to $251,000. So I picked up another $230,000 from the amortization, which, by the way, We moved out of this house sometime early and turned this into a rental property. And so our renters paid down the mortgage, another $230,000 for us. Thank you. And then we also got our rental income. Our rental income goes up over time. Now, I have found in Utah that rents double about every 10 years. That blows my mind, but it is absolutely true. And I'm saying, look, this is just a 4% annual rent increase, which means rents only really double every 20 years. So this is not like crazy, stuff. This is conservative math. And so we started out with a rental income of $2,800. If I forecast 20 years in the future, now I've got $6,135 a month in rental income. Okay, so how does this one primary residence converted into a rental property compare to putting $1 million in your 401k? Well, let's check it out. Here's the results. After 20 years, I've got a home value of $1.3 million. My loan balance is $251. So I got just over $1 million in equity. So that I should have a similar asset as value as if I would have saved money over that 20-year time horizon for retirement. My rental income is $6,135 at the end of the 20 years. And remember, my mortgage payment was $2,725. So let's just assume that mortgage rates never went down over 20 years. I never had a chance to refinance. The mortgage payment stayed the same the entire time. At the end of that 20-year period, I'd have monthly cash flow of $3,400 a month, or roughly $40,000 a year. So the point is, one rental property or one primary residence converted to a rental property, held for 20 years, spins off the same cash flow and has the same amount of equity as saving $1 million in your 401k or IRA. But real estate has optionality. Let's say that I didn't want to leave that $1 million in there. Well, I could take a cash out refinance. I could pull 75% of the 1.3 million out. I could pay off my $250,000 loan. I'd take $734,000 to go buy other cash flow producing assets or the boat I always wanted. And I would still have positive cash flow of about $500 a month. So I would just offer that most people are not winning in the 401k IRA game. More people are losing than winning. This is a super simple way to turn what could be what you might be considering for a flip, or you might be considering selling your primary residence that has a 2, 3, or 4% interest rate on it. I would offer that in 20 years, you would really benefit by keeping that property as a rental property. Caitlin, any questions or anything you want to interject there?
No, you are absolutely spot on. This is fantastic. I love it.
Sweet. Now, here's what this does not forecast, and it's almost impossible to do. But here's what I promise will happen. Somewhere in this 20-year journey, you're going to be like, man, I am so glad we kept that house. This is crushing. And did you see that rates just dropped down to 4%? We got a 5.5 parade on that. What if we pulled out $250,000 in equity out of this property, refinanced to a lower rate, and we bought another property? See, I said earlier that humans are great at thinking in kind of linear fashion, right? Just plot the one step out. But we are not good at thinking in terms of compounding. So I want to show you how this really looks like in my life, at least. This is how this kind of worked. This is a great diagram done by a woman by the name of Casey Franchini. She runs a little company called Brick by Brick Wealth. I interviewed her on a podcast. She's a little spitfire. I love her to death. And this was how she built her first 10 properties. But I think it shows how you can start with one long-term hold and how it can help you parlay and move faster into growing your real estate portfolio. So she was saving $1,000 a month. She needed 20 grand to buy a home. She was in a low cost of living area like a Georgia or something like that. And it took her 20 months of saving to buy her first rental property. And then once she bought her first property, she was still saving $1,000 a month to buy the next rental property, but she also had passive income from the first property of $500. So now she's saving $1,500 a month. It only took her 14 months to buy her second property. Then she rinsed and repeat. She took the cash flow from both properties, saved it on top of her income savings. It only took her 10 months to buy her third property. Fourth property took 8 months. Fifth property took 7 months. Sixth property took 6 months. Seventh property, 5 months, 4 months, 4 months. And by the time she reached her 10 property, she wasn't buying one property every 20 months. She was buying 4 properties a year. So this diagram shows how you move from your kind of linear progress to exponential progress, because you take the cash flow, you take the appreciation, you can refinance and pull some of that equity out and then leverage into multiple investment properties. And that's how you get exponential growth across your portfolio. And it's how we got to $100 million worth of real estate under management. All right. This is Capitol Hill Villa. I bought this property 22 years ago with my mom. We were crazy. We had zero business on God's green earth buying this property. We had no idea what we were doing. We didn't have any money. Like, this should not have happened. We bought it in 2001. We paid $315,000 for the 8-unit building. The average rent was $300 a month. The annual income, so 8 times 3 is $2,400 a month. We're bringing in across the entire building. So the annual, and then if I times that by 12, the annual income for the entire building was $28,000. But don't worry, we had a low mortgage payment. Just kidding. Our mortgage payment was $2,096 a month, and we were only bringing in $2,400 a month.
This was your same mom who sold her ring for the Fuddruckers burgers?
This is it.
Now you got her doing this?
Yep. Well, she got me doing this, actually. You know, as soon as we got our shit together and started making a little bit of money, Mom's like, all right, I can definitely tell you're not smart enough to deal with your own money. So we're going to, you're going to try to make up for all those poor kid issues you have, Josh. We're going to get you over that real quick. No fancy cars. You're buying real estate, dude. I said, okay. So we've been investing buddies ever since. So we were negative cash flow for 5 years. Like, the mortgage payment of $25,000 was barely covered by the annual income. But anybody who owns real estate knows that you have more expenses than your mortgage payment. We quickly learned that. And so we did everything ourselves. We blew the streets. We watered the plants that didn't have sprinkler systems. We painted, we scraped, we replaced toilets. We did everything for 5 years. It was negative cash flow. It sucked. My new wife thought I was a complete and utter moron. She's like, I don't get it. You go to work for 12 hours a day. Then you go to your apartment building, you work all night, and then when you get paid, you write a check to the business, and then the business spends all the money to improve the property. She's like, why don't we just give it to like homeless people and stuff? And I said, just trust me, I have a plan.
Very patient.
What's that?
Very patient wife.
Very, very, very patient. So I've moved on to way number 4 that we get paid in real estate, which is rent inflation. And I use this as a separate metric above and beyond cash flow, because if you don't look at it over 20 years, it's really hard to grasp this. So this is the same building, by the way, just shot from another angle. There's 2 buildings, a 4-plex and a 4-plex. And this is the current rent roll as of, I think May. Yeah. This is a May move-in right here. So now those units that rented for $300 a month, now they rent for $1,500 a month. So our monthly income is $12,317. That gives us an annual income. Remember when we started and bought this building, the annual gross rental income was $28,000. Our current annual gross rental income is $147,000. And if you just apply, our net operating income is about $103,000 after we cover expenses. And if you just apply a 4.5% cap rate to that, the value of the building is about $2.3 million. And it brings in $147,000. And I would have expected the value to go up, but I never in a million years would have expected that a building that had $28,000 in rental income 22 years later would have $147,000 a year in income over that long period of time.
That's incredible.
It's astounding. So rent inflation over the long period of time, I believe, is the most powerful force in all of real estate. But there's a gentleman who I interviewed on my podcast by the name of Jason Hartman. Some of you may know him because he's brilliant. And he has a podcast and what have you. This might be the last lesson that we have time to talk about here. But he taught me this concept called inflation-induced debt destruction. And I literally interviewed Jason on my podcast. And in the next 18 months after meeting Jason, I acquired $42 million in real estate. The light just clicked in my head and I went, holy shit, I'm not playing big enough. And I need to borrow as many dollars as humanly possible while interest rates are low. And I need to wait for inflation to destroy the value of the debt. I know that's confusing. I'm going to break it down and make it super simple. Hopefully I can do that as well as Jason does. So this is an illustration from his website. I'm going to walk you through it real quickly. This is showing mortgage payments and 30 years of inflation. So in 1972, the median home price was $18,267. Let's assume that we took out an 80% mortgage for $14,000. The mortgage rate was 7.37, and we had a 30-year mortgage term. The monthly mortgage payment was $100 a month. I'll take two, thank you. And let's just assume that this person had a 33% tax rate. So what Jason does is he breaks this down into these columns to adjust your interest cost for inflation and for tax benefit. So what Jason does is each year, 1972 to 2001, he tracks the annual inflation rate, all right? And then he says, okay, well, if we had inflation each year, then the value of the dollar is going down. What does that mean, the value of the dollar is going down? You see, a dollar is not a measuring stick. It's not a foot, it's not an inch, it's not a mile, it's not a yard. A dollar is a name for a measure of currency that is constantly getting less valuable. The value of the dollar is going down. That's why we have the concept of real versus nominal. What that means is, in nominal terms, name alone terms, a dollar is the same now as it was in 1900. But in real terms, the value of a dollar was way more valuable in 1900 than it is in 2000. Does that make sense so far? Okay, so Jason is devaluating the dollar year by year at the corresponding rate of inflation. All right, now these are the annual nominal, name alone, the number of dollars that it took to service this mortgage per year. So every year for 30 years, there was $1,210 that left Jason's checkbook. That never changed, same number of dollars. But when you adjust for inflation, you realize that the next year's dollars are less valuable, and the next year's dollars are less valuable, and the next year's dollars are less valuable. And if we just go out less than 10 years, the value of the dollars that's leaving your account every year is roughly 50%, because as inflation goes by, as time and inflation take hold, your income levels go up, your rental income goes up, your W-2 salaries go up, the amount of money that you're bringing into your checking account goes up, but your mortgage payment of $100 per month, $100.88, stays the same. So inflation is actually devaluing the value of the debt. When I realized that, I went, holy shit, I need to borrow as many dollars as humanly possible, as long as it's attached to an asset that has positive cash flow. And I want to spread out the repayment of that debt over as long a time horizon as humanly possible, because I want to borrow in 2020 and I want to pay back with 2030's devalued dollars and 2040's devalued dollars and 2050's devalued dollars. So what Jason basically said was, here's your annual inflation adjusted payment because the value of the dollar is going down, but then you also have to factor in your tax benefit. So I'll get to the punchline. What does it look like at the end of 30 years? All right. The original mortgage was $14,614. You'll remember that from our initial example. The nominal dollars to repay, which is, remember, nominal means in name alone. In name alone, there were $36,318 that left our checking account to repay this $14,000, which would be the principal and interest based on 7.37%. Okay. But if you adjust for inflation, because the dollars were actually devalued over that 30-year period of time, inflation adjusted, you actually only paid $16,000 back and you borrowed $14,000. Holy crap, your inflation adjusted interest rate was 1.06%. But it gets better because you also got to deduct that 7.37% interest rate. So your after-tax inflation adjusted dollars was $12,655. Remember, you borrowed $14,000. So your after-tax and after inflation adjusted rate was negative 1.16%. They paid you. They actually paid us to borrow those dollars over that period of time. And when I grasped this, I said, I need to borrow millions more. And I need to wait for this inflation-induced debt destruction, as he calls it, to take place. Now, some people are graphical learners, visual learners. So let me show you one other illustration of this. In the beginning, in year number one, there's $1,200 per year, $100 a month that need to be paid out to service this debt. But as time goes on, and the value of the dollar goes down, and remember, as the value and the purchasing power of the dollar goes down, that's because that coincides with your income going up. Inflation pushes up W-2 wages and salaries. Inflation pushes up the prices of goods and services. And if you sell goods and services, that means you have more dollars coming in from the sale of those goods and services. Inflation pushes rents up, which I showed you with the Capitol Hill Villa. And as there's more dollars coming into our account and the $100 stays stagnant, it feels like there's less and less dollars leaving your account. So over 30 years, it started feeling like $1,200 a year in debt service. At the end of 30 years, it feels like less than $300 because income has pushed up income and deflated the value of the dollar that you'd borrowed in. I'm going to pause there. The next thing I was going to go into was depreciation, but this is like probably could be a 30-minute conversation. I'd really like to just stop on this concept, and anybody who this doesn't land for, I'd love to just kind of volley it back and forth and have a conversation around it. Does anybody have questions?
I think it is so interesting, Josh. I have never looked at it. I have only looked at it in a really linear way of really the rich dad, poor dad concept, right? Hold it long-term, have the cash flow. I have never looked at it, nor have I seen the way that you had the columns on that one specific Josh Hartman's slide to actually see year by year the difference by the annual inflation adjustment. Go back one more. This absolutely rocked my world.
Yeah. So let's go through this one more time because I agree with you. When I was in the podcast with Jason and he took me down this, I just had this light bulb moment where I was like, oh, I get it. And I'm playing way too small. So let's just go. This is the column to me that really is the most powerful. When we start out in 1972, we're borrowing in 1972 dollars, meaning the value of the dollar is what it is at 1972. And we're repaying those dollars to the bank in 1972 dollars. Fair trade.
Yep.
But 10 years later, due to inflation, I'm repaying the bank in $1982. And in $1982, they're only worth $524. So I get to borrow at today's at $1972 and pay back at $1982, at $1992, and at $2001. I want to pay debt back in this decade, right? This is the place where I want to be stretching out that debt as long as possible, because very similarly, like if I anchor back into this, do I want to be making this do I want to be making this $2,000 mortgage payment, Caitlin, when I'm bringing in $2,400 a month in rental income? Or do I want to be making that mortgage payment when I'm bringing in $12,000 a month in income? That's a no-brainer, right?
100%. I'm thinking selfishly, through a portfolio that I help to manage and to run. Our rental income over the past 2 years went up 28% in the past 2 years versus it wasn't solely I'd like to think it was all me, but few factors that may or may not economically have played into it. What was inflation over the last 2 years?
Well, inflation peaked just north of 11, and that would have been it was June, but the report came out in July of 2022. And we're down, like I don't remember what the most recent report is, but it's dropping precipitously, depending if you're looking at CPI or PCE, but you're like, let's call it 6.
Yeah. So I guess I'm looking at it and going, the delta difference between when I layer all these on top of each other. So inflation goes up. So now my dollar that I'm fixed on my mortgage rates, right? I'm trying to put this through in my brain. So the dollar goes up, inflation goes up. So the value of my dollar went down, but I'm still fixed at this mortgage payment.
Yep.
So basically my mortgage payment's almost at, call it, an 11% discount than it was, right?
That's exactly right.
Discounted. Then my rental income's also gone up.
Yep.
And then I'm still able to depreciate on top of it. When you start putting all of these together, I get what you're saying, where if you actually just wait in time, you can't lose.
Yeah. When you put all the pieces together, you come to the conclusion that you're insane to ever sell a piece of property again. Now, let me give a carve out for that. Some of us have our primary businesses as wholesalers where we generate capital off of that business, and then we move that money into what I would call, so it's just a short-term strategy or a long-term strategy, right? So your short-term strategy to generate capital, I'm not saying you would stop that business. I'm just saying the money that comes out of there that goes into your long-term strategy, these properties should never be sold for very, very long periods of time, because we want to take out 30-year of debt and pay it back with $20, $40, $20, $50.
That was the next thing I was going to mention. The key to all of this is the right debt under it. We're not doing, okay. So for you, that debt always looks like a 30-year or a 15-year principal and interest. Well,
if you're in the residential world, 1 to 4 family homes, absolutely. That is a gold mine to be able to lock a rate for 30 years. You can't really do that on a commercial property. So, most of our debt is 7 to 10 year, and it has a 25-year amortization. So I know sometime in that next 10 year, I'm waiting for a recession. I'm like, okay, I do have regret, and I'm sorry for people are going to lose their jobs in that, and potentially our rental income is going to go down. But recessions always carry with them lower mortgage rates, always, because recessions are deflationary and mortgage rates follow inflation or deflation. If we're in a deflationary environment, mortgage rates go down. So I'm watching over that 10-year time horizon for a period of reduced interest rates to refinance, but I still plan to hold that property for years. And really if I kind of like to do a graph, my mortgage payment is doing this, or hopefully over time this, because I refinance it, and my rents are doing this. And the delta between these 2 points starts like this far apart. Sometimes it's like this. right? But in 10 years, it goes to here, and then you refinance. And in 20 years, it goes to here, and then you refinance. And in 30 years, and then you look back and you go, there's $150,000 in cash flow from 8 units. What in the world happened? But you would have never have dreamt it had you not lived that 20-year life cycle in that asset.
I love it. I love it. So if I'm looking at debt, right, because long-term hold and the right debt structure allows all of these economic factors to come into play, which create the big win. So if I'm looking at the debt, which as real estate agents, which a lot of us are, we're always looking at the asset. We aren't paying as much attention to the debt. We're more worried about, am I getting the right buy? Does it look, do I see the appreciation occurring? Rather than looking at the long-term hold, the cash flow, and the debt portion. So now if we're looking at the debt portion, when it comes to residential, you're going to go long-term 15 to 30 year.
30,
fixed.
not 15, 30.
Perfect. Okay. So you're going to 30 there. And then in the commercial world, you're doing a 7 to 10 year.
Yep.
Fixed interest rate, but a 25-year amortization schedule. What does that mean to the layman who may not be in the commercial world or in the lending world?
Oh,
what does that
great,
mean?
Great question. Thank you. So in the commercial world, you have a whole secondary market that I won't get into, but they don't do 30-year fixed. They want to be able to recirculate that money based on what's going on with current interest rates and inflation in a 5, 7, or 10-year period. And so there's the amortization or payback schedule will usually be 20, 25, or 30 years. In most cases, it's 25 years. So I have to pay it back based upon an amortization schedule that would pay the loan to zero over 25 years. But at year 5, 7, or 10, there's going to be a balloon. And that says you owe whatever the principal balance is at the end of the 5, 7, or 10-year period. And we know the loan isn't going to be paid off. So you either have to sell, pay it off in cash, or refinance the debt at that period of time. So there's a little more risk there because you don't have a 30-year fixed, like if you got a 3% mortgage rate for 30 years, you cannot go wrong. You're literally insane if you sell that house, in my opinion. That should be in your investment portfolio. Your kids already own it. Your job is just to maximize the rents and live off it the rest of your life. In the commercial world, I know I got to roll that debt in 5 to 10 years. And so I'm also always watching for a window of time where rates have gone down where I can refinance it.
Got it. That makes tons of sense. If people, because I think the debt conversation is a big proponent of this, overlaid with the inflation and the rent increase, and then the depreciation, right? Your 5 components all play so well together. But a lot of the people in our group are more, their operating businesses are more in the actual asset side. So if they do have questions when it comes to the debt side, that's literally what you do, not only in your operating business, but you've now taken it and you utilize it to get the rates of return in your investment side. If they have questions, want to reach out or want to help you, want your help as a resource, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you? How can they connect with you best?
Just shoot me an email. And by the way, I'm leaving Saturday for Italy for 4 weeks. So if I don't respond to you for 4 weeks, I'm sorry. But you can email me. I will respond to you at josh@joshmettle.com. So josh@joshmettle.com.
Perfect. Josh, I got to ask you a serious question that no one else on this call knows except Cindy and Shayna, who were here at the beginning. You just went to a convention in Vegas. You then got COVID, and now this is a tight window, my friend, to be leaving the country with a little.
I'm on every drug known to man. Okay. I mean, every drug that I could get a doctor to prescribe me for COVID, I am absolutely taking in more quantity than I should. So I actually am supposed to fly to New York on Saturday, and I'll be there for 4 days to drop my kids off at camp. And then I fly to Italy. So if I don't get a negative COVID test on Saturday, I've got 4 more days I can send my family to New York, and then I've got 4 more days to get a negative COVID test. But there's a lot of praying and a lot of pill popping going on right now, Caitlin.
I love it. Well, I thought you were a superhero to even do this incredible hour-long just pouring into all of us and educating all of us. And then you told me you're on your way to Italy. And I was like, this guy's crazy. He's my cup of tea. I love it.
Thanks. Well, I've only been in the Be Wealthy group now for a month or so, but I've already started a private money business that is going really good. And we've used all the resources from Be Wealthy. So I have like a massive amount of gratitude, and I wanted to give back to the community.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I see we already have some people asking for your email address again. So you might have some inquiries there and some connections there, but Josh, selfishly, even just for me, you poured in and educated me in an incredible way today. And I know all of our members feel the same way. So thank you so much, and have a blast in Italy. And we'll see you in September in Scottsdale for our next mastermind.
I'm so stoked. My wife's going to be there, so she'll get to meet everybody as well. So
that's fantastic.
Look forward to seeing everybody.
I love it. All right. Thanks so much, Josh. Feel better soon. Lots of liquids. I won't say lots of pills, but lots of liquids.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah,
Talk to you soon. Bye.